Hey everybody, it's Erin from techgadgetscanada.com, and normally I do all kinds of reviews of technology and gadgets, and I'm actually shooting some stuff, some kitchen tech in my kitchen today using the Thermomix cooking robot over here. But I thought this might also be a good opportunity to share something a little lower tech that you might find helpful and maybe even fun while we're all in quarantine. You could call this quarantine cuisine, maybe. I really love baking and cooking, and I sure love having technology to help me, but today I'm going to share the ultimate low-tech recipe with you. You don't need fancy gadgets, you don't need special pots or pans, you don't even need crazy ingredients. All you need is 4 things that you probably already have in your cupboard, and something a lot of us have right now, and that is time. So if you've got these 4 ingredients and an oven, you can make bread, and you don't need any special skills to do it. I'm going to whip up a loaf of homemade bread for you from a recipe I found online, and I will make sure that it's printed below in the description. Now this bread is called no-knead bread because, ta-da, you don't need to knead it. Normally kneading takes a ton of time to make the bread turn out right, but this bread recipe, you don't have to do anything to it. You're going to mix it up and then leave it overnight, and then tomorrow morning you'll finish the prep and bake it. So let's get started. Like I said, you don't need any special ingredients. You really just need flour, salt, yeast, and water. So that's pretty easy. You don't need a special loaf pan. You don't need a special bread pan. Really, all you need is a pot. If you have a pot of almost any size, so long as it has a lid, that is what you're going to bake your bread in. It's going to turn out great. So let's get things started. I'm going to take you through the recipe here, and it is super simple. You need 3 cups of flour. So you want to make sure you're using a dry measuring cup and get your flour out. The other thing you want to do when you're measuring flour is get a knife that's got a straight edge to it, and I doubt you guys can see this really well, but you basically want to level off the top of the cup so that you get a nice level cup of flour, and that's just going to make sure that you're measuring things reasonably accurately. 3 cups of flour into our mixing bowl. I've pre-measured the salt. You need 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, so I've got that in here. Just going to sprinkle it in. Now the key ingredient you need is the yeast. You only need 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, and just again, you want to kind of make sure it's leveled off and even, and sprinkle that over the top. So that's the yeast. You can also get packages of yeast. If you're going to be making a few loaves of bread, getting a jar of it and keeping it in the fridge is actually a really good idea. But like I said, or maybe I haven't said yet, but yeast seems to be in a bit of short supply right now. So if you do see one of these jars, probably worth picking some up for you. So once you've got your dry ingredients in here, just mix them up together so that they're kind of dispersed evenly. And I'm going to take my rings off because this next part gets a little messy. And we're going to get dough pretty much all over our hands. So you've got the flour in there. The last thing you need is 1 1/2 cups of water. And once you've got your dry ingredients in there, you're just going to add the water in all at once. Next up, mix it. And I'm going to try and do this with just one hand so I can at least keep another hand free and clean to manage the camera. But you're just going to get the flour, kind of pull it up from the bottom, try and incorporate it into that water. And you're not going for perfection here. This is going to look really kind of shaggy and, I don't know, messy. Like it's not going to look like a fancy loaf of bread yet. And like I said, it's it's really messy and it's really sticky, but it's okay because you can wash your hands off, obviously, when you're done. So get that flour in there, and this will take just a couple minutes really to get it all worked in there. And now I'm going to have to get some of this dough off my hands. So this is something that's really fun. If you guys are stuck in the house with the kids and you're looking for something to do that has, you know, a really great end result that everybody can eat afterwards, this is a great project. So once you've got most of the flour incorporated into that, it's going to sort of look like a big chunky lump, really. It's not going to look very good. But get it all together, sort of pat it into a bit of a ball, and then you're just going to put it back into the bowl that you've mixed it in and leave it. You're going to cover it with plastic wrap and leave this for 12 to 18 hours. It doesn't really... Okay, after your 12 to 18 hours has passed, you're going to have something in your bowl that starting to look somewhat like bread. So you're going to take it out of the bowl, and what I'm going to do is clear an area over here where I can work with this.
After those 12 or 18 hours, this is what your dough is going to look like. It's kind of a bit bubbly. It's obviously risen. It definitely is starting to look a little more like a bread dough. So what you'll want to do is get it out of the bowl, and it's still going to be pretty sticky. So make sure you've got a lot of flour on your work surface, because trust me, it is going to stick. So do your best to just get it out of there, dig in, grab that dough out, and get it onto a board. Next up, you're going to give that dough a quick fold, kind of really just in half. And once you give it that fold, you can shape it into a ball and put it in another bowl that you've greased to let it rise again for 2 hours. The other thing you can do, which is what I'm doing here, is you can cut that dough in half and make sort of 2 smaller loaves, which is great for kind of right now for our quarantine cuisine if you want to share some baking with your friends or neighbors. So you can just shape it into that ball, get it into a very well-greased bowl, and leave those to rise for 2 hours.
So here we are back here again 2 hours later, and we've got a really good looking dough, and you can see how much it's risen in the bowl. It's actually starting to look a little more like a loaf of bread now. So now it's time to bake. So what you need to do is preheat your oven to about 400 degrees. You're going to take your pot and you want to really grease it well. I just use cooking oil spray for this. I guess you could butter and flour the pan if you want, but I find cooking oil spray works really well. And you want to really get it in there. So now what I'm going to do is put this in the oven to come to temperature. So I basically want this pot, to be 400 degrees like the oven when the dough goes in it. So that should take just a couple of minutes, and then we're ready to bake. Okay, so the pot is hot. It's a hot pot. So I'm gonna I'm not even gonna take it out. I'm just gonna pull out the oven rack and get the dough into it. This is a bit of a delicate operation because you wanna get it in kind of all in one fell swoop, and then get it into the oven and get it closed. So it's a bit tricky, but we'll make it happen. So there's my pot. Here is my dough. And here we go. So I'm just gonna try and coax it in there. And there it is. It went out all in one fell swoop, clean pot. So I'm gonna get the lid on there now. And let the baking begin.
Now, if you're doing the one big loaf, you're going to bake it at about 400 degrees for about 30 minutes. And after the 30 minutes, you're going to take the lid off and it's going to bake for another 15 minutes. Now, this is what it looks like, steamy, when you take the lid off. It doesn't really have a ton of color, but it's starting to look cooked. So you'll put it back in the oven for those additional 15 minutes, and that's going to get it beautiful, crisp, and brown. When that 15-minute timer goes off, it is time to get your bread out of the oven, and check this out. Check out how beautiful and golden brown and crispy this is. This bread has a really thick and really nice crunchy crust and a really soft, plump interior. Let's take a look.
While the bread's been baking, I've been working up some other stuff. I'm actually baking a cake in my Thermomix right now. That video is going to be here on the channel as well if you're curious about some of the higher tech stuff you can do. But I promised you low tech bread and an easy recipe. So let's see what this looks like inside. And it is still very warm, but it's time. Now look at that. So it's beautiful, tender, nice crumb. Smells so good. I'm just gonna try a little corner of it. Hot, fresh bread. If the only kind of bread you've ever had, excuse me for talking with my mouth full. If the only kind of bread you've ever had has been from the grocery store, man, making your own fresh bread at home is a serious treat. And as you can see, it was really easy. It was just those 4 ingredients and some time. Leaving it alone overnight. Didn't have to do anything, didn't have to knead it, didn't have to do anything special to it. And you've got a great loaf of bread. And I'm still chewing on my bread. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it and found it helpful or entertaining while we're all in quarantine, hopefully you'll hit that like button and give me a sub and keep coming back for some of the other videos that I'm going to do. Probably more tech and gadget reviews, but you never know. If you guys like this, let me know and I'll find some other stuff to cook for you. Till the next time, you can catch me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm at Erin LYYC. You can also always find me at facebook.com/techgadgetscanada. Hey everyone, it's Erin from You'll also need some yeast. Now, yeast is in hard